said, "I don't think you are handsome. I'm moving out," but he was ready to make me regret it. "I don't think I can do this. I'm really emotional right now. I'm trying so hard to keep myself together to put this here. My whole life is a mess right now because of my wrong decision. My perfect marriage was going so well until I associated myself with the wrong company. When I say the wrong company, I mean the type of people I called my friends. My friends introduced me to the type of lifestyle that made me see less of my husband and disregarded him at any time the opportunity came. Hi, Reddit. It's actually sad that I'm here. I didn't wish to ever come into this space this way. I have been an active listener and didn't imagine that the viewers here would listen to my stories one day. My name is Tessie, a 30-year-old accountant. For the sake of privacy, I would not release my full identity and that of my husband's own and his profession. I'm trying to get my life back together and wouldn't want to complicate things for myself any further. My husband would be going with the name Robert. He is 32 years old. Last week was supposed to be our 6 years wedding anniversary, but as it is now, my husband and I are going through the process of getting a divorce. The divorce papers are ready, but I haven't been able to put myself together to go through it, not to talk of signing the papers. I don't really know how I feel right now. I'm sad and at the same time mad. I'm mad at Robert. His revenge was so severe that it would affect me for a long time to come. Moving past this stage wouldn't be so easy for me. My whole life has been put on hold. I can't even walk freely on the streets of my neighborhood or even express myself like I used to. It feels like I have been caged and forbidden to be happy. I really missed my former lifestyle. I had the freedom to do whatever I liked at my own free will. Nowadays, I have lost the ability to smile. What usually interests me doesn't any longer. Guys, to say that I'm depressed is really an understatement. I don't even know the word to describe it. I have lost words for it. In my entire life, I have never been this depressed before. Guys, do you guys actually know what it means to be unhappy? I have never been this sad before. I was not just kicked out of my own matrimonial home, guys. I was betrayed by the people I called friends. My friends misled me and made me to be in this state that I am right now. I'm 30 years old. I should be able to tell what's right or wrong. Yes, I know that. But my case was different. I was foolish enough to trust them and thought that I was living the best life. They introduced me to a lifestyle that isn't worth it. I, on the other hand, couldn't say no to it, and I accepted it. In fact, I was happy to have them as friends and thought we were living the big girl's life. They were destroying both my life and marriage, and I failed to realize it. Robert and I had a great start. I'm the type of girl that likes to make her things simple. I was always contented with whatever I had and didn't look elsewhere. I have always loved Robert and never had any problem with the way he looked. I was the first that fell in love with him before he could even approach me. Robert was just a guy that loved playing with kids in the neighborhood. Anytime he came out to play, I watched him from a far distance, admiring how he played with those kids. We were neighbors back then, but didn't know each other that well. My feelings for Robert grew stronger each passing day. I couldn't take the bold step to approach him, and wished he would one day notice me and probably get to know him. Just one day my wish came to pass, and Robert said hi to me. Funnily enough, he noticed me watching him and was wondering why I didn't get close. When he told me, I felt really embarrassed, but then again, I was happy that he was the one that first initiated the conversation. From that moment, we became friends and got really close to each other. We dated for a year before we finally got married to each other. Robert and I getting married together was one of the best things that happened to me. At that time, I felt like it was just a dream and wasn't real. I would pinch myself to know if I was actually dreaming or not. Everything happened so fast that I couldn't believe I was married to someone I admired from a distance. After we got married, Robert and I moved out of the town and went somewhere far away from where we lived. It was at the new place where I met my 3 friends. Robert had always warned me not to have anything to do with them, but I usually shrugged it off and felt like Robert had no idea of what he was saying. I enjoyed having them around, and we did things together. My friends were the type of people that loved to party and have wild fun. I was never the type that loved making friends. I started having friends when Robert and I moved into the neighborhood. My friend's apartment was just a few houses before ours. I can't really remember how we became friends, but it just happened. Now I realize that I made a big mistake in associating with them. They have ruined my life, and now I'm facing the consequences alone. Can you all imagine that none of the people I called my friends could accommodate me for the main time pending when I get a place of my own to stay? Robert sent me out of the house, and I reached out to them, but they all turned me down. One of them even had the audacity to tell me right in my face that I don't belong to be among them. The other told me she couldn't accommodate me because her fiancé usually comes over and wouldn't want me to snatch him away from her. Guys, I couldn't be more heartbroken when I heard them say all those things to me. Robert was right anyway. I should have listened to him and never gotten close with them. My ignorance has caused me a lot. The most heartbreaking thing was that my friends removed me from our group chat and blocked me on all platforms. I didn't believe that things would change in a twinkle of an eye, and the people I called my friends would turn their backs on me. You all would be wondering what exactly my friends did that ruined my life for good, right? Well, I'm going to tell you all. After all, it's part of what brought me here. If not for the wrong decision I made in hanging out with them, I wouldn't have been here in the first place. This would never have happened, and I wouldn't have been chased out of my matrimonial home. I keep thinking about why my life was ruined when I joined them. Besides, they have been into this for a long time, and it had no effect on them. At least I didn't see how it has affected them. They seem not to be bothered about anything or have anything to lose when things go south, but I had a lot to lose, which I have already lost. So guys, when I first got closer to these ladies, which were my neighbors back then, I didn't know the type of lifestyle they were living. They were nice and polite. Sometimes they visited us, but Robert never liked it. Most of the time he acted not to be harsh and pretended to be friendly. Anytime they left, my husband would sit me down and advise me not to have anything to do with them. He told me to just be cordial and relate with them like neighbors. Robert also advised that boundaries should be drawn between us, and I shouldn't get too attached. I didn't listen and never took what he was saying that time seriously. I felt like he was trying to stop me from making friends, since I didn't have any when we newly got to that neighborhood. My husband was like an angel sent to me to stop me from destroying my life, but I didn't take it seriously. I wish I could turn back the hands of time and make things right again. I just wanted to make friends and hang out with ladies like me. Growing up, I didn't really make any friends, not like I had low self-esteem or was shy. It was because I never liked having anyone in my space. But after I got married and moved into our new neighborhood, the urge to make friends came, and I wanted it badly. Being married, I wanted to share some things with my friends and have sleepovers. I wanted to enjoy what I couldn't do while growing up. I also wanted to not just spend time with friends, but also to have people I can count on anytime I needed something. It's so unfortunate that I made that decision with the wrong people. These ladies introduced me to their wild social life. They not only drink, but also smoke during every nightclub we attend together. The first few times I went with them, I didn't drink any alcoholic drinks. I only took non-alcoholic wine and didn't smoke even though they tried making me do it. I would always turn them down. But guess what, guys? That didn't even last for long. Anytime I saw them drinking and smoking, I would always feel tempted to do it. It was a fun thing for me to watch. Even though I usually turned them, I would still feel like trying it out. But I couldn't because I didn't know what my husband would say or react when I started doing all of that. Not until one night the girls and I had gone clubbing as usual. They offered me a shot and told me there's no harm in trying it out. They said sometimes it is good to take it in order to warm the body up because of the harsh weather. I replied and said I would have loved to give it a try, but I'm scared of my husband and wouldn't want to do anything that would hurt his feelings. The girls all burst into laughter, and I was really embarrassed. They teased me by calling me a submissive wife. One of the ladies even called me a puppet that can't do anything on her own unless her husband tells her what to do and when to do it. Guys, I didn't even know how to feel that moment, whether to be angry or not. Somehow they were telling the truth that I wasn't controlled by Robert. My husband allowed me to do anything I wanted to do and never imposed anything on me. They were right when they said I was being a submissive wife. Guys, don't get me wrong. Being a submissive wife isn't a bad thing. My friends were only ignorant at that time, and I couldn't clear them on the importance of being a submissive wife. Instead, I felt less of myself and took their words seriously. That was the mistake I made. That night was the beginning of my problems. When the ladies teased me of being weak, I wanted to prove to them that I wasn't. Proving a point to them that night turned me into a different person. I didn't know what I was thinking at that moment. All that was in my head at that point was to show that I wasn't a weakling they were assuming or puppet, and so I took a bold step to trying the shot. The first one was too strong for me. I supported it with a lime. After that, I took in a few shots, and that was how I ended up almost finishing a whole bottle. Every shot I took, the ladies cheered me up and encouraged me to go further. It was fun, and I felt happy that I proved my point. After I had enough of the shots, I decided to try smoking. I didn't care to know what substance it was. All I wanted to do was to give it a trial. The cigarette was handed over to me, and I took the first sip. Guys, that was the only thing that I remembered that night. Every other thing that happened, I had no idea about it. I saw myself in the ladies' apartment the next day. At that time, Robert was on night shift, and so he wasn't at home. He was to come back the next morning. That was how I escaped being scolded by Robert. If my husband was to be around, that would have been another different story entirely. The most complicated part of it was that I passed out after trying how to smoke. That morning was one of the most dramatic mornings ever in my life. I experienced a hangover for the first time that morning. My head was spinning and couldn't even stand properly. I suspected that there was more to the cigarette the ladies gave me, but they told me that it was normal to pass out, since that day was just my first time. It happens, but not to everyone, depending on how your body can take it. It happened that I couldn't take it, and it affected me. So guys, the girls helped me out to get over the hangover. They prepared something spicy for me, which helped to relieve it. The next couple of weeks after that incident, I couldn't follow them to the club because my husband wasn't on night shifts. Yes, guys, I usually go out with the ladies when my husband isn't at home. I snuck out on several occasions without him knowing, and he didn't suspect anything. Well, not for a long time, though, and at least that was what I thought. Like I said earlier, I couldn't go with the ladies for some time. I got really bored at home and didn't know how to tell Robert that I wanted to go out with the girls. They would send me lots of text messages asking me why I wasn't going out with them, and thought maybe it was because of what happened after I tried smoking. Honestly, I didn't know how to explain things to them because it wasn't because of that. I was just too embarrassed to say that I couldn't go on out with them because my husband was around. After how they laughed at me the last time in the club, I was extra careful in whatever I told them. The time Robert wasn't on night shifts was boring and choking. What Robert and I usually do anytime we were together in the house became boring to me. Even our favorite TV shows as couples didn't excite me that time. All my mind was just about going out with the ladies and having real fun. That time, Robert and I went out together to see movies at the cinema and went on an ice cream date. That was never enough. I wasn't still satisfied, and I made sure not to show it. Robert would be angry if he learned at that time that I was hanging out with the ladies, even though he had warned me not to. I won't lie, guys. I was moody whenever Robert and I were together. I didn't know what the ladies did to me that made me attached to them like I was. What I anticipated the most at that time was to try smoking again after the first attempt failed. The only problem I had was that Robert was always around. The afternoon shift would last for a couple of weeks, and I was impatient. At some point, I had to lie to the ladies that I was a bit under the weather and couldn't join them. The question they kept asking me about not joining them for clubbing became a bit too much, and I couldn't help but to find a way to keep them off for a while so they wouldn't suspect anything. Also, I was lucky they didn't visit to ask me why I haven't been hanging out with them during that period. That made it easier for me. So guys, a few weeks later, my husband was back on night shifts. I was not just happy that he was back on night shifts, but it was to last for a month. That means I would have the time to go clubbing with my friends without having anything or anyone to stop me from going. The first day Robert started the night shifts, I was very excited that I would be going out after a long time. We got to the club, and I told my friends that I would like to try smoking again. They were reluctant to give me after how it resulted the first time. After much consideration, they let me try it, and I wasn't myself for a few minutes. Everything went blank. I told the girls how I was feeling that moment, and they said it was normal. That day was the beginning of me smoking. I started smoking and drinking, and I couldn't stop myself from doing it. It got to a point that it became an addiction. What saved me was that it was only whenever we were in clubs that I did that. So guys, smoking and drinking wasn't the only thing my friends introduced me to. Well, they didn't force me to do any of that. Even though I started drinking and smoking because they teased me with it, I shouldn't have bowed to their pressure. I should have stood my ground and said no. That's all in the past now anyway. So, like I said earlier, Drinking and smoking wasn't the only thing they introduced me to. The ladies hung out with different guys. Every night, each of the ladies went home with a random guy, but I was the only one that usually went back home most of the time alone. So one night, just as we were having fun together, the ladies tried to introduce me to a guy. I didn't refuse because I also wanted to feel included. The guy they introduced me to was handsome and good-looking. His name was Fred. Fred and I chatted throughout the time we were at the club, and it was fun. When it was time to go, Fred didn't want to let me go. He asked me to spend the night with him, which I declined. After much thought, I decided to spend the night with him. Guys, that was the beginning of my infidelity. Fred and I spent the night together, and I didn't feel guilty about it. I wasn't drunk or forced to do it. I made the decision myself. After that night, Fred and I kept on meeting with each other. It got to a point that I stopped hanging out with the ladies. I didn't just date only Fred. I had other guys that I went out with every night. My friends who introduced me to that lifestyle were surprised to see how quickly I adapted to it. I was happy at that time that I took a bold step in coming out of my shell. Well, that was a very bad way for someone to come out of its shell. There was nothing tangible to get from it. The whole experience wasn't worth it for me. If I had known, I would have made friends with people that would add value to my life, people that don't have time to be clubbing and going out with random guys. What surprised me the most was how these ladies spent time with random guys while they were in a relationship. I never asked why they were cheating on their boyfriends. I was the only married one amongst them. I was supposed to be the mature one, but ended up being the most stupid. The ladies played me like a piece of trash. They never had my best interest at heart, and I failed to realize it earlier beforehand. Like I said earlier, I met a lot of attractive men. The last guy I met after was Leonard, Leo for short. Leo was very attractive, and I fell in love with him instantly. Leo had everything I ever wanted in a man. He was not just good-looking alone, but was also rich. Leo got me lots of expensive gifts and took me out to a lot of amazing places. We had fun together. I didn't hide my marital status from Leo. He wanted a serious relationship with me, even though he knew I was married. Of course, I accepted it immediately. At that time, I was already planning on how to leave Robert. Being with Leo that period was more than enough for me. He was funny, knew how to cook, and also knew how to spend time with me. I couldn't ask for anything else, though Leo didn't plagiarize me in leaving my husband. In fact, he never proposed it. I was the one that made that decision myself. On the other hand, I didn't know how to do it. It was hard for me because Robert didn't do anything that could warrant that. Let's say then, I had a little bit of love for him, but it was just based on the fact that we were married. The guys that I had been with opened my eyes to see that my husband wasn't even that attractive. Of course, I had been with other men, and I know what handsome means. My husband's handsomeness can't even be compared to theirs. I kept asking myself what I saw that made me want to be with Robert in the first place. The atmosphere at my home became hostile. I made it unbearable for Robert. He didn't do anything to offend me, but I acted like I was mad at something. My husband noticed my weird behavior, and he asked me if anything was the problem. He told me that I had turned into someone he doesn't understand any longer. The conversations we had on that issue never ended really well. Most of the time, I ended up flaring up without any valid reason or walking out on my husband, which always made him upset. Robert hated to be walked out on most, especially if you guys are having a serious conversation. It was wrong to have been walking out on him, most especially when he was the one that initiated the conversation. He felt concerned about my sudden behavior, and he decided to ask me how good a partner he was. But I do stupid to think that the world revolves around me. Robert had the option to choose whether to ask or not. After all, he wasn't obligated to do it. So guys, I thought my husband didn't know that I was going out with random guys, and even got to the point of me having one as my boyfriend. Not until one night that my husband had gone to his night shifts as usual that I learned that he knew. That night, Leo drove over to my house and took me out. I didn't come back home until the next morning. I spent the night at Leo's place. Guess what, guys? I had no idea that my husband had us followed. I thought he had gone to his night shifts, but didn't know that he didn't go. The next morning, Leo dropped me off, and I went back to the house. I got inside and met Robert at home. I was very shocked to see him. At that moment, I was nervous, and I casually asked why he was home that early. Robert looked at me and asked me if that is what I do whenever he isn't around. that I had the audacity to hang out with the ladies he warned me about behind his back, and I even had the nerves to be sleeping around with different guys. I pretended not to understand what was saying and asked him to be more specific. Robert immediately yelled out loud, asking me to answer him because he was dead serious. Even though I was supposed to be scared after seeing Robert react that way, I wasn't. That point, I became calm and in fact irritated. I replied to Robert and said he doesn't have any right to tell him who to hang out with and who not. I also said the affair part wasn't intentional, but I was glad he noticed that. I told Robert that he should be happy that I was with someone like him. Robert was surprised to hear me say that. If he had had his way, he could have punched me hard on the face, but he didn't. Instead, he punched the wall really hard. I told Robert I shouldn't disfigure the war because he's mad at me. Instead, he should face me directly, or even go for a boxing competition, and I turned to leave. But immediately turned back and told Robert that I didn't know why I have been with him all this while, and doesn't even think he's that handsome or even that attractive anyway. I also said I wanted to move out of the house and go be with my boyfriend. My husband looked at me and laughed sarcastically. He told me that it was too late for me to make that decision because he didn't even plan to be with me any longer. I asked him what he meant by that, and he said he had filed for a divorce and the papers would be ready in no time. He also said that he had been keeping an eye on me for a long time then and was looking for a perfect opportunity to throw me out, which I had made easier for him at that moment. My husband grabbed my hand and threw me out of the house. A few minutes later, Robert opened the door and threw my bags outside. Before he left, my husband told me that it was over between us, and I shouldn't dare show my face at his house again. Robert also told me that he would deal with me in a way I wouldn't recover so quickly. At that moment, I was relaxed, and didn't even beg for him to forgive me or let me inside because I had a lot of places to go to. I took his words as just a mere threat, nothing else. I had my friends who lived around the neighborhood in Leo, and so I had nothing to worry about that time. I went over to Leo's place but didn't find him there. Immediately, I remembered that he left for work after he dropped me off. That day, I couldn't go to work because of what happened. I called in sick and I was given the day off. I spent the rest of the day at Leo's front door, waited for him to return back. I didn't have any spare key to get into the house. I tried calling Leo but wasn't reachable. That was how I stayed outside alone and did nothing. So guys, Leo came back that day late. I was mad at him for staying out that long without even trying to reach out to me to know about my well-being. We usually hang out together and made sure to check on each other anytime we had a busy day. But Leo didn't, and I didn't hesitate to ask him why. Instead of being remorseful or pretending to care, Leo yelled at me for coming to his house unannounced with my bags. The most shocking part of it was that he told me that he would be having his mom over and wouldn't want her to come and see us living together. I walked up to Leo and placed my hands on his cheeks, and I asked him what was wrong if his mom comes to see us after all. We are dating, right? Leo took my hands off his cheeks and drew backwards and said, if he could remember correctly, we were just getting to know each other and nothing more, and said that was what he thought. He apologized for leading me on or putting my hopes high. Leo told me to get my things together and leave his apartment because he was done with the relationship and couldn't continue any longer. Leo even had the audacity to tell me that his mom would be mad at him if she learns that he was going out with a married woman, that he's from a well-reputable family, and wouldn't want to ruin the image of his family. I was angry at Leo for telling me that, and I asked him why he had been going out with me if he knew all of that. Guys, isn't this heartless? If he had so much respect for his family like he claimed, why would he have made me destroy my marriage with Robert? It wasn't like my husband couldn't take care of me, but my selfish desires made me look outside. I had never been embarrassed like the way Leo did to me. I felt so used and was very ashamed of myself. I left his apartment in shame and went over to my friend's house. It was getting late that day, and I didn't want to spend the night outside. The weather was very harsh. I got to my friend's house and explained what happened between my husband and I, and also Leo. From the look on that face that moment, I knew that they were happy. None of them felt any remorse or even wanted to accommodate me. They shut their doors on me and asked me to leave. That moment, I realized that I had been thrown out on the street as a result of my wrong decision. I kept a bad company that affected my life negatively. I ended up spending the night outside in the cold, and it wasn't a funny experience for me, guys. A few days later after the incident, I became a topic of discussion in the neighborhood. What surprised me the most was how pictures of me kissing and dancing while I was dead drunk with all the guys had been leaked. No one could have made that video except my friends. All evidence pointed to them, and I couldn't believe otherwise. The leaked photos and videos caused me to lose my job that I had even before I met them. That triggered my emotions and went over to their place to confront them. When they saw how angry I was that day, they needed no one to tell them that I came because of the videos. Before I could say anything, they laughed at me and looked me from my head down. They asked me if I enjoyed the tea because more is going to be uploaded. One of them then said, "Why not ask Robert if he knew anything about this because he has a lot on his sleeves and would give me answers to any of my questions?" They all burst into laughter, and I felt really embarrassed. It was at that moment I knew that Robert was behind it. I realized what he said when he told me he was going to deal with me. I went over to his place but didn't allow me to step into the yard. He ordered the gatekeeper not to open the door for me. Guys, I couldn't reach out to Robert to stop running my reputation that period. My pictures and videos were the topic of discussion in our neighborhood. I learned that Robert was the one that sent it to my place of work, which made me lose my job. The revenge struck me hard, and I'm yet to recover from this. I hope I can quickly because it isn't funny at this point. Update. I can't believe it's been 3 months already. Redditors, I'm really sorry for keeping you all for this long. The truth is that I have been trying to put my life back together after what happened to me. I'm still shocked trying to process everything that happened these past few months. It's been a challenging one for me, and I wouldn't lie about it. I need help at this moment because I'm really heartbroken. My husband and I got divorced 2 months ago, and I thought that would make me forget about everything, but it isn't working. The moment still remains fresh in my head. Even when I tried distracting myself from everything that happened, I still ended up getting hurt. I have been living in guilt. To make matters even worse, my pictures and videos kept on spreading. It's been 3 months, but it hasn't gone down. I was able to meet Robert when we were going through the divorce process. I begged him to pull the videos and pictures down and pleaded that he shouldn't upload anyone again. Every week, Robert kept uploading one picture or video. He told me that would only end if I pay him off with a certain amount of money. Guys, it's a huge amount of money, and I don't even know how to go about it. Out of frustration, I signed the agreement just so I could have my self-respect back, but that was one of the biggest mistakes I have ever made. When the stipulated time for me to remit some amount of money until I finally paid it off and I wasn't able to meet up with the deadline, Robert would waste no time to upload it. He knew I wasn't working and I didn't have any means of getting the money. That was why he decided to ruin my life for good. Guys, also, the money keeps doubling if I wasn't able to meet up with the deadline. Ever since I signed the contract, I haven't been able to remit any amount. Robert is really having fun ruining my life. I can't blame him, though. It is the ladies that put me in this awkward situation I blame. They were the ones that sent those pictures and videos to my husband. My husband didn't like them but had to form an alliance with them to ruin me. If I had known, I should have been extra careful with those ladies. Who would have imagined that Robert would have anything to do with them? Ruining my life paved the way for him. People he didn't like, not even a bit then. I'm so foolish to be used this way. Let's forget, Leo and I ended things that very day he asked me to leave his house. It's been months since we last spoke, and he never cared to reach out. Well, what has happened has happened. He really does not care about me. I will just focus on getting my life back and try to forgive myself for everything that happened. It wouldn't be easy. That's what makes it hurt.